Today on Let's Talk Bitcoin, we're joined by Robbie, one of the developers on the Counterparty team. Robbie, thanks for taking the time with us.
No problem. Good to talk to you.
So I'm brand new here. What's Counterparty?
Counterparty is a project that introduces several pretty cool and pretty powerful peer-to-peer financial tools layered on top of Bitcoin itself. It is the first fully functional decentralized exchange and heading and badging platform ever. It was released on January 2nd of this year. Code's out, it's available, and it's all working today. So Counterparty is known as an embedded consensus system. So this means that each Counterparty transaction is embedded into a Bitcoin transaction and then broadcast on the Bitcoin network. So by doing this, Counterparty gains the security and decentralization of Bitcoins and the Bitcoin blockchain. Really, our goal with Counterparty is to create an open technology platform that's free for businesses, developers, entrepreneurs, etc. to build on. So our top principles around the project have really been around openness and sustainability. So, for instance, the code is open source, and the three founders, of which I'm one, as well as most other members on the team, are essentially self-sufficient volunteers. To that point, we went to great lengths to have a clean and fair launch. We modeled the movement after successful open source efforts such as Linux and Bitcoin itself. And I guess, we were the crazy Bitcoin burning guys. I think that's a good high level overview of Counterparty. I'd like to get into what the actual features of Counterparty are. So, we spent a lot of time talking to people about Counterparty. For instance, I was in California last week, just doing spoke at a few meetups, spoke at a Stanford cryptocurrency class. That was great. And just got some user feedback, talking about these financial features and then what people saw in it, as well as just talking to several entrepreneurs and developers that are already building on top of the platform. So we really reduce that down to, when you talk to somebody about Counterparty, really getting it down to three main use cases that we're at least seeing with the community today. But before I get started talking about those, I want to just make the listeners aware that Counterparty is a global technology. And as it has, these features, listeners should just be educated about the laws in their jurisdiction and use the technology in a way that's lawful and responsible for wherever they reside. With that out of the way.
Well, hang on a second here. let me jump in there for a second. What kind of a statement is that to make in this current environment? Because, I'm very interested in these types of technologies, but the legal situation is at best really unclear. So, this is just your general disclaimer that you don't know what's going on. And so people shouldn't blame you if something happens, right?
To a point, but I think you really just echoed a lot of what it is. So really just technology in general, generally what happens is that the technology will come up. So Bitcoin is a perfect example of this. It comes out and the legal precedence hasn't really been set because the laws have not had a time to adjust and really take this kind of technology into account. Where you had Bitcoin rise up and be kind of like decentralized peer-to-peer money, if you will, Counterparty and a lot of these 2.0 platforms like it are essentially talking about decentralized markets, decentralized law, with these autonomous contracts, for instance. There's so much potential to really move society along and help out society, really create a lot of innovation, expand the economy, create more jobs in the space. There's a lot of potential with all of this technology, but at the same time, it's not fully clear 100% how it will work out, especially such as countries like the United States. So that's not really something meant to scare people. It's more just for people to be aware of this. And,
but this is unknown terrain.
To a point, I think I think that regulators will try to utilize existing laws on the books to the maximum extent possible. But for instance, a lot of those laws, it's not clear that they apply to peer-to-peer technologies.
Well, let me ask this a different way. Do you feel comfortable using your technology given the current legal environment?
Yeah, I personally do. I think, we're using it today for creating assets and trading those, things like that. And you can do things such as hedging as well. There are certain features such as, when you have instruments, and I'll get into this a little bit, such as binary options and contracts for difference. If you were to form a company around that, how do you lawfully conduct business, especially in a country like the United States, for instance? in a way that is upfront and staying out of any kind of gray areas, so to say. So I think really this is what Counterparty is itself. It is a technology platform, an open technology platform, and it's also a global technology, which means that it's not, we couldn't just say, oh, here's these features, but we're going to write in the code that if location United States disable these features, because someone would just fork it and they would remove that feature set. The responsibility really falls on the end user to just make sure that they're conducting their business right for them and in the grounds of the laws.
Now that's in contrast to the Satoshi Dice solution, which is to ban the IP addresses of certain countries so that users from, say, the United States can't visit the site. But in practice, what happens is that since the service, as you say, is a global decentralized network, you can't actually censor the service. You can only censor the information about it on certain websites. Because there are some other attempts to use this, and probably Ether will wind up using this for their crowd sale. You're saying that this is really a fig leaf.
Satoshi Dice is a little different model. So they are essentially a centralized, I guess they do Bitcoin gambling sites. So when you do that, you have a single point.
It wasn't the website that was the gaming part. It was the Bitcoin addresses. People send Bitcoin to these addresses, and each address has a different set of odds. So regardless of where you are, if you know the Bitcoin address and have access to a Bitcoin client, you could do it, whether or not you could visit the web page. That's what's happening here, right?
Yeah, to a point, but on top of that, it's a little bit different because you have the protocol itself doing escrow of bets and things like that. And so there's not actually a Satoshi Dice centralized entity that's doing this escrow and determining these bets and doing the exchanges. It's even more centralized. Satoshi Dice built on top of Bitcoin. It was new ground because you weren't doing, you're not setting up a betting site, for instance, where you're taking US dollars, which clearly has issues. You're working with Bitcoin. And then still, I'm not a lawyer, but there still seem to be even some kind of ambiguities with that, which is even taking Bitcoin. There were still elements of centralization around it. So this is taking that kind of technology even farther. General financial tools technology Counterparty is not about creating a betting site, but it's just about creating these general financial tools that we put out there, open source to users, to developers, and then letting them build up whatever they want to build up around it, whether that be a company that helps other groups make their own coins for like brand promotion, or whether that be a company that, where people can hedge their risk exposure, or whether that be something like a Satoshi Dice where somebody's doing that. And none of that stuff is things that we can stop. We're just simply making the source code and putting it out there for people to use. So from a features perspective, the tools that Counterparty provides, user-created tokens, options, contract for difference, tools similar to that, are able to be used many ways. However, the three most common use cases that we're seeing, at least today, are create a coin. So with this, you can create your own coin or token or asset for your company or your project. And you can do it in less than 30 seconds using CounterWallet, which is the graphical interface. It's kind of like it's a web wallet, essentially, for Counterparty. You can use this token that you create for brand promotion and retention, crowd sale-based fundraising, and more. And of course, Adam, you're aware of that because you're launching LTB coin here shortly.
Yep, getting pretty close.
The second case is essentially to trade anything. So Counterparty has a built-in peer-to-peer exchange or decentralized exchange, which allows for folks to easily trade these tokens that can represent virtually anything with anyone without the middleman involved. I think that's probably the one I'm personally most excited about. The third one is essentially hedge or bet on anything. So the platform allows for peer-to-peer hedging and betting to both enable speculation and for risk management.
So we are getting ready to launch LTB coin on the Counterparty platform, and I have been playing around with the interface. Let's talk about the wallet for a second, and I guess talk about assets in general. This was the first time that I have ever actually created a crypto coin. I'd looked at CoinGen before, which was this web page that lets you create like a script clone very easily. It never really was anything that I wanted to do. But once the Counter Wallet launched on testnet, I started playing around with it and saw how easy it was and saw like the dividend feature. That was the really, really cool feature. And the page that shows you all of the different addresses that hold like the shareholder page. Those are really cool features that I haven't seen on tokens. Talk to me about these user created assets.
Well, I mean, I think the whole concept of user created assets, it's really a powerful one because it's overall a pretty general concept that you can use in just a variety of ways. You know, brand promotion. They can signify various properties. Like there's this one company that's using Counterparty called Digital Tangible Trust. They essentially have a token that represents a gold coin, and you can buy a gold coin. They store that gold coin with a third-party custodial company, and then you essentially trade this token around as a proxy for that gold coin. And then essentially, whenever you want to take the gold coin out, you send that token back, and then they'll ship you the gold coin. Those are just a few usage of this kind of token technology. So especially when you're talking about distributions or dividends.
Is this smart property?
This is another really interesting thing about this field is that there's a lot of terminology going around, and even internally, to be honest with you, we're still wrestling. Do we call them assets or do we call them tokens? I was talking to Matt Elias over at Coda, which is kind of an industry, a nascent industry group around these 2.0 movements, such as Ethereum and Mastercoin and Counterparty colored coins, for instance. I think there's an interest with all of us kind of getting together and really determining, okay, what is the exact vocabulary that we use here so that we're all on the same page. So to that point, smart property itself, I personally, I think the term is used inaccurately, at least with its initial meaning as I understood it.
So redefine it for me then. What's the correct term for smart property?
When you have a token and you actually have more of a physical device, such as an ATM machine, and this ATM machine can essentially read the blockchain. From that, understand, okay, the ATM machine says that there's this digital token on the Counterparty network that represents me. And right now I'm owned by this address. And, I was transferred off to this address, for instance. So it can know things like such as who it's owned by, just different feature enablement, things like that. So it's essentially getting that intelligence through some kind of blockchain technology, for instance.
So the intelligence is an important part, and the intelligence is what's lacking here?
Yeah, well, I mean, what we're talking about here are digital tokens. I think that smart property seems to be more of a specific term. And as far as I know, there's no devices that can do this today. And I think that the concept of smart property is really exciting, where you can essentially have the physical world and this technology. But it's not something that exists like right at this present moment. Really, you need these hardware manufacturers to add that kind of support into their products.
I've described cryptocurrencies to this point as, like Forex markets, and what's coming with the tokens built on top of things like Counterparty is more like a stock market. Is that a good analogy? Am I missing something?
To me, at least, I think a Bitcoin is like this peer-to-peer money system. And then on top of that, when you layer on Counterparty, for instance, you really get like these decentralized markets. So yeah, Counterparty could be like a decentralized asset market where you can have these assets that represent, whether it be some kind of crowd sale, or there was one company that on Counterparty that he made a formal filing with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, and he was performing his IPO on top of Counterparty. So they can even represent the handing out of equity shares, and it seemed like he went through all the correct channels for that, at least for where he was headquartered.
You're saying that it seems like, because you guys don't do any vetting whatsoever, because again, you're just putting the platform out there.
Yeah. Yeah. We just put the platform out there. So that this, like, he could say, hey, listen, guys, I want to do this. And I can say, well, great, but I can't stop him, or I can't, it's really that he could do it whether we wanted him to or not. And that's really the nature of this technology. But I think that's what makes it so powerful as well. You're talking about decentralizing these kinds of things, and then essentially all the innovations that can come out of that when kind of things develop at the speed of the people that are using it, instead of at the speed of some kind of centralized entity that can grow large and bloated and has to manually approve things or whatnot. We've seen that with the internet, with how the internet has matured and how content can be published. There's no central clearinghouse for it. There's no large cable companies or newspaper companies that you have to convince to put your information out there. You can simply publish it. The best information tends to rise to the top, or at least get attention. So all these communities that form out of these different interests that people have, and how people can find their own interests, really form these social networks with one another and share content develop based off of that. So I think that doing this similar kind of things with the concept of finance, monies, markets, law, you can have some very interesting kinds of things and just really speed up the pace of innovation.
One of my favorite features about Counterparty's user-created assets is the dividend feature, which basically lets you send an amount that is split between all of the tokens. So however many tokens you have out there, you essentially issue an equal amount in a single transaction, which is very cool because if you were doing that just with Bitcoin, it would take a different transaction for each one, or at least a different output, right?
Yeah, exactly. So because if you're doing, with Counterparty, we actually call them distributions now. So if you're doing a distribution, and you can have one kind of asset or token that you use, like, so say you have LTB coin and you want to do a distribution, you could have another asset you actually do the distribution in. So you have all the owners of LTB coin will get some share of this LTB contest token. So we would make a different asset and then we would give that as a distribution. Now, okay, so I have to comment on this. You've changed the name. It was dividends and now it's distribution. So, I mean, like, again, is this just trying to posture as best possible to not have any unnecessary conflicts? Yeah, I think that's part of it. So this is something that, so for instance, we were meeting with some Silicon Valley attorneys here last week, and it was kind of funny to listen to them because they were so excited about this technology, and they were just almost kind of giddy about it. And it was really neat. Just because they do a lot of venture capitalist stuff, and this is something that's really different and really new. And I think part of what comes out of these kinds of conversations is, you have certain terms that have kind of a legal weight, at least in the United States, for example. And these include things such as IPO, such as stocks, such as shares, dividends is another one. And so part of this is like, I think that this technology is really something that's different. There are some fundamental differences with this technology between it and the current conventional or mainstream systems. And I think a lot of this is just really expressing that and making it clear that we adopt these different terms and they're terms more appropriate with the technology itself and how we're using the technology, which is not to create an exact analog of what's already out there, but it's fundamentally different technology. So it's kind of like to not confuse matters. And I think this is really a common movement with all of these companies or organizations such as Mastercoin and Ethereum. And I think it's part of the reason why we're looking to work together to really develop a common vocabulary that we can utilize for this technology.
CryptoKit is the world's first Chrome browser Bitcoin wallet. It's the easiest, fastest Bitcoin wallet payment system. With a simple one-click install, it takes just seconds to get your wallet set up. And because CryptoKit finds the address and payment for you, there's no more fussing around or tab switching. CryptoKit is more than just a wallet. It comes with a preloaded PGP encrypted social network, news feeds from Reddit and Google, and up-to-date charts from exchanges. Finally, CryptoKit Directory allows you to make two-click payments with any of the BitPay merchants. Once you install CryptoKit, you won't need anything else. For more information or to download CryptoKit, visit CryptoKit.com.